If you're a med student, head to mosaic.org for free medical study notes and resources from other med students from around the world. Today we're going to be talking about the larynx. The larynx essentially has two functions. The first function is in speech production, and the second is in protecting the airway. As air descends down the larynx, it then enters the trachea, and then after that enters the lungs. The larynx is located in the area known as the hypopharynx or the laryngopharynx, and that's the area that's immediately under the oropharynx. We've shaded the laryngopharynx here in green. The larynx as a structure is composed of cartilages, which are held together by membranes and ligaments, with muscles attaching, and that's all draped in mucosa. The main cartilage of the larynx is the thyroid cartilage. The thyroid cartilage acts as a shield over the anterior larynx, but it doesn't continue posteriorly. It's not a ring all the way around. There has to be something that forms a posterior part of the larynx so that the vocal cords can attach. And that's mainly the job of the cricoid cartilage. The cricoid cartilage looks like a signet ring, but it's facing backwards so that the thicker part of the ring is posteriorly. That's called the lamina of the cricoid. Anteriorly, there's a much smaller section completing it, which is called the arch of the cricoid. To see it inside view, the thyroid cartilage sits like this, anteriorly, and is larger, and it relies on the cricoid to help make up the posterior surface. And sitting on top of the cricoid are the two small arytenoid cartilages. Now I should mention that all of these cartilages so far are made out of hyaline cartilage. That's their specific type. Because of the arytenoid cartilages and the cricoid cartilage, that then gives us a posterior wall that the vocal cords are able to attach on. So I'm going to put them in now, and this more inferior ligament, which the arytenoid process has provided a posterior attachment point for, and the thyroid cartilage has provided an anterior attachment point for, that's the vocal ligament. It's not the vocal cord, but the vocal ligament provides the submucosal skeleton for the vocal cord. They're not quite the same thing, but this is very important in the vocal cord structure. If it wasn't for the arytenoid cartilage sitting on top of the cricoid cartilage, it wouldn't have a posterior point to attach to. There's another ligament as well, which sits a little bit more superiorly, and that's the vestibular ligament. The vestibular ligament is actually attaching almost at the junction of the arytenoid and the small cartilages which sit on top of it, the cuneiform cartilage, whereas the vocal ligament is sitting more inferiorly, and it's actually attaching to a process on the arytenoid which faces anteriorly, and that quite nicely is called the vocal process. It's important that you understand about these two ligaments that they're not isolated structures. They're actually the uppermost and lowermost continuation of membranous sheets. I'm going to put them in here now. So the vocal ligament is actually the superiormost part of a broad membrane called the conus elasticus. And it's called the conus elasticus because when looked at from below, it moves from outwards, inwards, almost like a cone would. It's attaching at the superior border of the cricoid cartilage, and then it moves superiorly and medially towards the vocal ligament. And it thickens superiorly as the vocal ligament. The vestibular ligament is exactly the same. The vestibular ligament is the inferiormost part of the quadrangular membrane. And it's very important that you understand this concept, because if you do, you then understand why we have this thing called the false vocal cord. So the quadrangular membrane is so named because it looks like a quadrangle, and it's got an anterior border which is on the epiglottis. Basically, the anterior border runs down the lower half of the epiglottis, and the posterior border runs along the arytenoid cartilage from the vocal process to the junction of the cuneiform cartilage and the arytenoid cartilage. And both the inferior border and the superior border of the quadrangular membrane are both free. So the inferior border is the vestibular ligament, which is forming the submucosal skeleton for the vestibular fold, which is also known as the false vocal fold. And the superior border is also draped in mucosa, and the superior border, because it's running from the arytenoid to the epiglottis, is the aryepiglottic fold. And the aryepiglottic fold forms the posterior half of the opening of the larynx. So the opening of the larynx, or the laryngeal aperture, is composed of the epiglottis at the front and then the aryepiglottic folds at the back. So just to correlate that with what you see, this is the type of view that you would get during laryngoscopy. This is an image taken from Wikipedia in the public domain from Gray's Anatomy. And what you can see here is you can see the laryngeal aperture, so the opening of the larynx, and we're looking down anteriorly here at the epiglottis. And then what we're looking at here is the superior border of the quadrangular membrane, because it's extending backwards all the way to the arytenoid cartilage, which is situated underneath here. These little bulges are the corniculate and cuneiform cartilages, which are just accessory cartilages sitting on top of the arytenoid cartilage. And you can see that extending from them, coming out to meet the epiglottis, there's this fold, which is the aryepiglottic fold. And that aryepiglottic fold is the superior border of the quadrangular membrane. And you can see that it then comes down. So we're basically looking here we're basically just looking at this internal section of the quadrangular membrane draped in mucosa. And you can see that as it comes down, it kind of just tucks away there. It's a little bit difficult to appreciate, but it's just tucking away. And that is actually this ventricular fold right here. And what is emerging from out underneath it is this section, which is the true vocal cord. So we're seeing the true vocal cord, and then here we're seeing the false vocal cord, also known as the ventricular fold, and that is the inferiormost part of this thing running along here, which is the quadrangular membrane going from the arytenoid cartilage to the epiglottis, and superiorly it is also free, that's this section here, and superiorly it's forming the aryepiglottic fold, which is the inferior part of the laryngeal aperture. Now, the final thing to talk about when we're talking about the structure and the skeleton of the larynx is the epiglottis. And the epiglottis is this little guy right here. I'll put him in for you. Epiglottis. And the epiglottis, as you can kind of see, is kind of spoon-shaped or leaf-shaped. And it actually has natural fenestrations in the hyaline cartilage, so it kind of keeps it even lighter. And so I kind of think of it like it's a tea straining spoon, but they prefer to think of it as a leaf. And this part of it here is called the petiole. And so leaves have petioles, which are like the narrow section away from the actual main part of the leaf. And they say that the petiole of the epiglottis attaches just on the internal surface, just on the inside of the superior thyroid notch, just down about here. And the epiglottis faces posteriorly, so it faces like this, and it attaches to the thyroid cartilage via the thyroepiglottic ligament, and it also attaches to the hyoid bone via the hyoepiglottic ligament. And basically it is the thing that helps protect us against inhaling boluses of food. We have this natural reflex where we actually bring this posterior wall of the larynx closer to the anterior, so that the epiglottis helps cover it whenever a bolus of food goes down. So the only final thing I want to talk about, talking about the larynx, is how you think about the divisions of the larynx. So basically from the hyoid bone, or from the superior part of the epiglottis, so from here down to the level of the vocal cords, that is the supraglottic section. The supraglottic section. And then from, basically from, if I go down here, basically from the apex of the vestibule down to the vocal cords, which we know are sitting at the same level here as the vocal ligament. This section here, this is the glottis, and then anything inferior to this until C6, that is the infraglottic section. And at C6, so cervical vertebrae 6, that's when we say that the larynx turns into the trachea, and it's also when the esophagus commences. So that's basically everything we wanted to talk about. We've got a great article on this on mosaic.org. If you're a med student, check it out. In the next section, we'll talk about the muscles and the neurovascular supply of the larynx. Thanks.